We have spent the month, just in case you weren't around, we have spent the month exploring the first 4 sections of The Science of Mind, what is called the textbook. It doesn't say on it that it's the textbook, but traditionally it's referred to as the textbook because it is the basis for so many of our classes. And those first 4 sections that precede any of the chapters, for me, are very helpful. They became very helpful to me in my own personal early studies because it was a kind of a really dynamic and clear way of looking at these very important components that are basic to our teaching, that are basic to our philosophy. The first being the thing itself, which is the one life, all that is, God, Spirit, the universe, diamonds on Neptune, whatever we prefer to call it, and wherever our comfort zone is. The way it works. So every time I say the word it, we're still talking about all of life. The way it works. And that's important to know because they're over the centuries and over the extensions of theologies that have evolved, there has been a dilution of that understanding, and so it is our practice, it is the practice of people who follow the Science of Mind philosophy as a way of life, to start at the beginning, stay at the beginning, keep everything based in the beginning, and that is with the one life. And how it works is as much about how it doesn't work as how it does. More about that in a minute. So the next section is what it does. And so some of what it does is pretty obvious because as creator, as the activity of creating, and as creation itself, so that's the idea, the formulation process. Think carrots, the seed, the soil, and carrots in your coleslaw as we had last night for dinner. So you have the beginning, the formulation process, and the result, yes? And then last week we spoke about how to use it. And just the idea, just the suggestion that the divine, the creator, all that is, whatever we prefer to call it, is usable by us, is a little rocky sometimes in our understanding, because many of us may have grown up in traditions where the idea of the divine, the idea of God, was this big authoritarian something that was far away in another realm, and maybe or maybe not heard our prayers, maybe or maybe not answered them, maybe or maybe not found us worthy, maybe or maybe not even liked us on any given day. And the philosophy of science of mind teaches something very different. Now, I'll remind you just briefly that the teachings of the science of mind, the philosophy of the science of mind, are a culmination. They're a bringing together of what Ernest Holmes found in his endless explorations and personal studies to be the great teachings from the beginning of any kind of recorded history, whether it was oral or written, whatever it was. And those common threads formulate what we refer to as our principles. They're the foundation of this teaching, and it all begins with the one life. Everything comes from that. So today, I thought I'd really take us out on a limb, and I would ask the question that some people think but don't ask, and that is, what difference does all of this make? What difference does it make? What difference does it make that there's one life? What difference does it make that at least in theory I can use it? What difference does it make that the way that one life, that intelligence, that pure energy, that consciousness has set things up, as if you will, is to be consistent and to be automatic in its response to us, which is what makes it possible for us to use it. What difference does it make? There's still people hurting each other all over the world. There's still people starving. There's still people homeless. There are still so many people who don't have enough of whatever it is. There is still sickness and difficulty and COVID. So what difference does all of this make? It's all well and good, you know. I'm speaking out loud the words that are at least in one person's mind who is listening to this. It's all well and good to say that there's one life. It's all well and good to say that that life is good. That life is loving. That life is beneficial. That life is constantly providing. It's all well and good to say that it's all that we are. It's all well and good to say that we can use it. But what difference does it make? Because it doesn't seem to make any difference. That those thoughts are all understandable, are they not? They're all understandable. Do we, as practitioners, as people who, which means people who practice the science of mind, do we just sit here in our comfy wherevers and just watch the world go by and pretend that none of that is happening? How do we deal with what appears to be counter to what we teach? Seatbelts on. How we deal with it. It's not a matter, first of all, of dealing with it. Because the human experience is very much its own thing. And yet it is always divine. No matter how it appears. Now please, I don't know how many of you are with me right now, but don't go anywhere because then you'll miss it. How can I say that? How can I say that the human is always divine and look at these atrocities and look at these circumstances and look at these conditions and say it's always divine? So we go back to the beginning. And this is in fact what practitioners who are licensed are trained to do. We go back to the beginning and we remind ourselves that there is only one life. One life. And that life is pure love, is generosity and clarity and confidence and all of those things that we consider strength and aspects that we in fact wish to embody. It is that. And it is that in everyone, yes, including them. It is that in everyone, everywhere, all the time, period, end of discussion. Sorry, I don't mean to yell. Well, maybe I do a little bit. Circumstances. Please, because this is one of the hardest, in my mind, it's one of the hardest things to grasp as we're getting deeper into the teaching. It's one of the hardest things to grasp, particularly when we're faced personally with something that is difficult, painful, a loss, or one of our family members is. Please listen. Jean Watson, today's practitioner in service, read from Ernest Holmes the words that we are not waiting on God. God is waiting on us. So what in the world does that mean? Because, I'm ready, I'm willing, I'm available, I'm open, I've prepared for my good to be everything that I can imagine, for my life to be everything that I can imagine, and for everybody else's life to be everything I can imagine. But not everybody believes that their life can be better. Not everybody believes that they can get well. Not everybody believes that they can feel more secure, more at ease than they do. And do you know why? Because of the evidence that's all around them. All around us is this, now what feels to me like a cyclone of information that tells us all the reasons that we can't. We can't have, we can't be, we can't do. But we should. We should do this, we should do that, we should do this and that and the other thing. And we should take this medication, even though the side effects will probably be worse than the disease. And we should, and we should, and we should. What difference it makes to immerse ourselves in these first four sections of the Science of Mind book and read them, even if we never read another word in the book itself, read them again and again and again, read them backwards, read them forwards, read them sideways, until something opens. As Jean shared in her service this morning as practitioner, there is an opening that happens. Sometimes it happens in our mind first, but usually it happens in our heart. It can be the tiniest shift in our perception that allows room for a maybe. That allows room for and. Allows room for outcomes and possibilities and solutions and resolutions that we never could have imagined before, because we were so attached to all of this information, so-called, this blah blah, that has been circulating around many of us all of our lives in one way or another. And what that does, what that cyclone does, is it builds a case. It builds a case for poverty. It builds a case for lack. It builds a case for limitation. It builds a case for chronic disease. It builds a case for COVID. Is COVID not a real thing? What are you saying, Reverend Ann? Are you saying that COVID is make-believe? Unfortunately, no. I wish I could, but I can't. What I am saying, and I'll use COVID as an example, is that susceptibility to anything, our susceptibility to anything. Still got your seatbelt on? is supported, wasn't necessarily created, because somebody else probably planted that seed. Like, well, all of these people in my family have had heart disease, so the chances are I'm going to have heart disease. It was probably planted somewhere else or by someone else, seeded by someone else. But we have to buy in. We have to buy in to that susceptibility. So, does that mean that I can be as healthy as I am today, which is pretty darn healthy, even if I do say so myself, for as long as I want? That's exactly what I'm saying. So let me go back to the beginning. There is one life. It is all life. It is the creator, the activity of creating, and the creation itself. What does that mean? It means that it is all that I am. It is all that you are. It is all that everyone and everything that you can think of is. It is all. If there's only one, it is all. So then how come these other things happen? Because that's always what happens with the questioning. Yeah, but how come all of these things happen? If there really is this extraordinary life that expresses through each one of us, why doesn't everybody have just this same euphoric experience? Why doesn't anybody seem to have a euphoric experience? So as we go through the sections, and the last section is how to use it. We remember as we explore that part of the teaching that our life is experiencing itself through us no matter what. No matter what we do, no matter how we do it, no matter. It's experiencing life, it's experiencing itself as us, no matter. I know that's a big idea, but just stay with me. But we aren't necessarily experiencing it. And there's no guarantee we will until we decide to. Until we decide to open ourselves to that experience, to open ourselves to those possibilities, which is all possibilities, just P.S. To open ourselves to a way of being and seeing and understanding that supersedes all other things. All other things. Each one of us, this is just coming into my mind right now, so apparently it needs to be said. Each one of us has more courage, clarity, strength, conviction, health, omniscience in our pinky than any of the happenings that are going on in the world. Our pinky. That sounds ridiculous, right? Because when you think about the happenings that are going on in the world, they seem so overwhelming. They seem so overwhelming. Or we decide they're overwhelming. Or we look at other people's experience and we say they must be overwhelmed. They must feel powerless against whatever it is, the army, the famine, the virus. They must feel overwhelmed. We're the ones who are deciding that. The truth is, we don't know what their experience is. And the only person in the world whose experience we can change, for starters, is our own. If we don't start with ourselves, if we don't understand the importance of, even if you don't understand a single word I've said this morning, if we don't understand the importance of alignment with the life that lives through us, if we don't understand the importance of cooperation with it, and by cooperation, it's very simple. It couldn't be simpler. The spiritual laws are simple. It's done unto us as we believe. That's simple. We can't do diddly squat for anybody else until we get in our own lane and stay there. I'd like to be able to tell you that you can do this kind of prayer and that kind of prayer and this kind of meditation and all of these other things, and the world will be righted and everything will be well. What I will tell you is that the world doesn't need righting. And everything is already well. Because underneath, around, and beyond the circumstances and effects that we are looking at, whether they are personal to us or they are something in the news or whatever the case may be, we are the ones who are not seeing God in all things. I don't know about anybody else. They may not be seeing God in all things either, but what I can tell you is if I see a circumstance and I judge it in a certain way or I evaluate it in a certain way, I have stopped seeing God in all things. Easy? Maybe not. Worth it? I would say unequivocally. Because to be able to see God, to see the universe, to see the cosmos, to see Allah, to see Jehovah in all things is clarifying. It helps us see then if there's something for us to do or be that is different, that can be helpful. It is active, living, and breathing compassion. It is life-changing. So we go back to the beginning, which, as the song goes and the sound of music, is a very good place to start. And for me, it's the only place to start. And that is that there is one life. And that life is all life. And that life is my life. And that life is your life. And that life is the life of everything that we see, we have ever seen, or we will ever see, and before and beyond. And that life is the truth. It is the truth of my being. It is the only truth of my being. And I am no longer keeping it waiting.